So those are the two major ones. And also relapsing on drugs and alcohol. If they're in recovery, and they suddenly relapse, that might be a sign right there that, hey, I'm struggling. I need somebody to help me. I just fell off here and I'm afraid I'm going to fall off there.
Hey, listeners, welcome to another episode of Light Beyond Limits, the podcast where we talk about the breakthroughs and stories that people have had with their limitations and the lessons they learned from it. I'm your host, William Blake, and today we have a very special guest with us who I'm very excited to have on, Julee Kay. And Julee Kay is a mother, grandmother, author, and transformational speaker, as well as a coach. She is a suicide survivor, and she has made it her life's work to help those who are suffering with suicidal ideation. Wow, dyslexia hit me hard there. Ideation and the loss of loved ones to suicide. Julee Kay believes one life lost to suicide is one too many. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Julie, thank you for joining me on my podcast today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I know my audience just right off the bat, as a coach and a speaker, as a mother, grandmother, and an author, and someone who dives into a really not talked about topic. And I don't think it's not talked about because it's something that is not prevalent, but it's not talked about because I think it's kind of the taboo topic, right? Suicide is with pornography and with miscarriage and like those kind of what a lot of people see as kind of darker side of things, but you have transformed it in a way and stood up as one of the heroes and mentors to help individuals to combat suicide. So first and foremost, Julie, what's your story? What's happened to break through your own limitations and helped you become you?
So I was the youngest of five growing up, and I had a grandma who committed suicide when I was 12. And that sent me into drugs, where I stayed for several years and ended up in an abusive relationship. And when that person died due to the drugs that we were doing and some other factors, I had to get help. I was suffering severe PTSD and all kinds of stuff. And I ended up in a treatment center where I learned some tools to get clean and sober. But here's the thing, I'm not perfect. I'm human. And I relapsed, and then I'd get sober and I'd relapse. And I did that countless times. But during this period, all these periods of time in my life, I ended up having 4 children. And so, yeah, I'm a mom of 4 adults. Um, and I tell you, I'm going to tell you this. I'll be honest with all you parents out there. You think can't wait till they grow up? Let me tell you what, enjoy them while they're little because they're much harder when they're older. But so that's what I've been through. Attempted suicide myself several times. And you would think that I wouldn't do something like that, considering I knew how it felt when my grandmother did it. But, I didn't connect it because I was just a child when it happened with her. And so I didn't connect how it affected everybody else. And so doing that was me trying to escape. I thought that life couldn't get any better and that it was always going to be ugly and hard and difficult because I raised all my children by myself, even though they had a couple different dads. They never stuck around and they were all on me, and I carried that load, and so by trying to get out when it got hard, was not the greatest choice. But if I felt it was my only choice because it was dark and I didn't feel like I had anyone to turn to. But today I've learned in my life that that is not the choice I want to make. I want to help people to not make that choice because things do get better. Things do change. That's the one constant we have is change because everything changes from one second to the next. Nothing stays the same and things can always get better. And it's not like all of a sudden things might just like be awesomely better. You might have to work at it. You need to find somebody to talk to. You need to get an anchor. And an anchor is someone that you know. someone that you can go to and say, hey, I'm struggling, I'm having a hard time, and set that up when things are good. Set that up today when things are okay in your life and say, hey, if I get to a place where I might make a bad choice, relapse on drugs, try and kill myself, do something really stupid, can I call you? Can I count on you to be there? So you need to do that for yourself. And you know what's funny is sometimes when we do that for ourselves, that person that we reached out to may end up turning around calling you saying, hey, I need help. And so it goes both ways. And so, I mean, I have an anchor in my life today. And so I'm never alone. I can call her anytime. I can show up at her door anytime, and she knows me inside and out. She knows every medication I take. She knows everything about me. I've known her entire life. And she's known me her entire life because she's my 28-year-old daughter. And so when I talk to you about, the suicide thing and having someone there, I want you to realize that suicide has a sister. And that sister, which some people don't connect, is mental health. 90% of the people who die from suicide have a diagnosable mental illness that can be treated, but they never got the treatment. They never reached out for the help. So that's where I am today. That's my goal, is to be there when somebody calls me or needs me to drive over to their house or get on a Zoom call if they don't live near me. It's so easy for us in today's society to connect with each other, because we've got these computers. And I mean, yeah, you're just across town, but you could be in Florida and we'd still be this close. So there are so many ways and so much technology that there's no reason for anybody to sit there and feel like they're completely alone, because there's ways for us to reach out.
There always seems to be ways. That's empowering. Thank you for being someone who is out there helping out with this. Because I know for myself, I I've never gotten to that point, but I have had two close individuals. One was a cousin, and one was one of my childhood best friends. And within a week of each other, this is a couple of years ago, they both committed suicide, and were successful with it. And so it was a very hard impact for me to lose one of my cousins who I loved their funness and their creativity, and then my childhood best friend who I grew up with and who he seemed fine. And that's kind of the hard thing, is that they seem fine, um, and then you hear the news one day. What would you suggest, Julie, if, like, for people who, like, are there symptoms, or is there something that you can look out for, if you, like, yourself, to be able to self-recognize, or a friend or family member to be able to see if they're going down that path?
Yeah, there are signs if they start to isolate, not want to go do things that they used to do, hang out with their friends and stuff like that, and just be like, no, I just, not into it today or whatever, and they start isolating. That's a sign right there. If they start giving away the things that they cherish, like belongings, like a picture or paintings or whatever they have, and they start giving them away, it's like they're giving them to the people they want to have them because they don't plan on staying. And so when they start to do that, that's a sign right there. And people need to learn to look into people's eyes when they're talking to them and sharing with them, because I could be sitting here talking to you smiling happy as could be, but if you looked in my eyes you might see the pain. That there's none right now, but you might see the pain that's back there that I'm not putting forward, but you can read it in the eyes. you know um you just so those are the two major ones. And also relapsing on drugs and alcohol. If they're in recovery, and they suddenly relapse, that might be a sign right there that, hey, I'm struggling. I need somebody to help me. I just fell off here and I'm afraid I'm going to fall off there. And so paying attention and getting involved. That one, Robin Williams, he loved to make everyone laugh and he loved to make everybody happy, but nobody paid attention to the signs and the sadness he had in his eyes. Because if you look at some of the things he's done, you can see it in his eyes. It's there, and he was struggling, and I don't know. I think those of us who try and make everybody feel more happy and more comfortable and more alive are the ones that are like inside just screaming, you know. And so I pay attention to that too. The class clown is not always being the class clown to be funny. He's doing it to hide what he's really feeling, and
Yeah.
we all tend to do that sometimes. I mean, how many times has somebody said to you, "Hey Willie, how you doing today?" And you might have some stuff going on, with the wife or whatever, and you're milling through, and you're like, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you?" But really, you're not. A lot of us do that because we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want people to see that we can be weak. I don't have a problem letting people see I'm weak, because I know I'm weak and I know I'm strong. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that gets me that gets me thinking. How do you see it in their eyes? Like how do you determine, is it like an innate skill that happens in someone, or can you like train yourself to be able to see it?
You can see sadness. You can see sadness. I can tell when, like, with any of my kids, when they're like, "Oh, everything's good," I'll just look at them and be like, no," because it's just that they just don't seem as bright and happy and as lit up. You know, have you ever seen one of your kids when the Christmas lights go on the Christmas tree, how their eyes just light up? They just get bright and full of excitement. you know? So you can see that. So if you can see that excitement, you pay really close attention. You can see when somebody, and somebody that's not doing great, they may not give you eye contact. They're going to look away. They're going to try and avoid you with their eyes because they know the eyes are the windows to the soul. So they try not to let you see in their eyes because it's a tattletale. So I know if I'm talking to somebody and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing really good. Things are good. Work's picking up, and yeah, things are good at home." And they're looking down, and they won't look me in the eye, and they're telling me all these good things, but they don't want to look at me. I don't believe them. I believe that they're struggling and they're just trying to placate me with the goodness of what they think of things when really they're not good. So,
So reminds me of with the Christmas tree. It's like my baby, she's 11 months now, and favorite thing is when we're walking inside, hit the garage button, and when she hears the noise, she like turns around real quick and just stares at the garage with her bright eyes, just like, wow. And the garage door coming down seems like the coolest thing in the world. So I totally get that. How 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 do I want to ask this? So I heard about something, and I want your opinion on it. And it had to do with suicidal tendencies as well as depression. My head tells me that talking about those things openly with someone who is suicidal or who is in a deep depression, the topic of what we're talking about, my head tells me that don't do that because that will make them think more about it. But then I've heard from other people who are more of an expert than I am that actually talking about it decreases the chances of that.
yes, and it can
Yeah.
save lives, and it saves lives
Can you
by
tell me
having
more about that?
because if you talk about it, and you say, yeah, so when my grandmother committed suicide, I was only 12, and they didn't talk about that kind of stuff. The only thing that was said to me was, "Your grandmother jumped out of a building and she's dead." That was it. Then we had the funeral, never talked about nothing. Do you know how I felt? I felt lost. I felt empty. I felt broken because such a wonderful human being had been taken from me. How do you think your wife would feel if it was you that took yourself from her? And so I talk to him like that, an example of how I felt, and then I give him an example of, on October 27th of 2013, I went up Small Cottonwood Canyon. I took enough pills to kill an elephant, and I was found. I was in a coma for 3 days. Do you know what hell my kids lived through for those 3 days? Wondering if their mom was going to come back or not, waiting for all the brain scans. How do you think your children would feel? You know, how do you think that as a, do you know they love you? You might think that they don't right now. You might feel like nobody loves you. Nobody cares. The world would be better off without me. But guess what? That's your brain lying to you. That's your brain telling you lies and false stories to make it okay for you to do this thing that you're choosing to do. But what you need to do is the hard thing. Choose to live, choose to fight, and know that in the end, it's going to get better. I have a grandbaby today that's 3.5 months old. I wouldn't be able to hold him and love him and go take over with him 3 days a week, to give his mama the support she needs if I wasn't here. Who would she have had? Nobody. You're needed. You're wanted.
Amen.
And that's what you do. And you let them know, and if they choose to go do it, that's their choice. I can't stop them. I can't force them. I can't tie them down and say, no, don't do it. I could just say, let's think this through. Let's think it through from the beginning to the end. And in most cases they stop and think, and they're like, yeah, my poor daughter, or their whoever, because they're forgetting about those things when they're in the depths of the darkness. you know
So is it as simple as asking, "Hey, are you thinking about suicide?" or questions like that?
well, I don't just straight out ask them that. I'm just like, hey, what's going on? They're like, oh, this. Oh, wow. So, what's going on? What are you thinking? And sometimes they'll just say, I just don't want to be here anymore. I'm tired. I quit. And then you just talk them through that, and let them know that, it's okay to be tired. It's okay. You know what? Why don't you quit? Why don't you quit for the next half an hour, and we'll just drink some coffee and visit and just quit? Quit everything. Quit thinking about them. Quit worrying about this. And let's just do a minute at a time. Let's just hang out. Here's a true story. Okay. So I was feeling really, really suicidal. And I called my friend. And I knew she was in recovery, but I knew she could still get stuff. And I says, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to. She's like, wow, I've been feeling the same way. Let's get together and talk about how we can just do it together. I'm like, okay. So I have a neighbor across the street that has wood. So I loaded up some wood in my car, and we we met up at the canyon, and we get out of the car. She's in her car, I'm in mine. I had this wood in a plastic bag. And I get it out, and we're standing there. And like the traffic's going, and so I go to move, and she trips over me, right? And she falls. And so I'm laughing. She's laughing. We're standing there just laughing with this wood, right? Traffic going back forth. Like, okay, we get it together. So we go across the street, we're pulling the wood. And we get across the street, and about 3 feet across the way, the bag rips and the wood starts spreading out. So we both bend over to get the wood, and we bash each other in the head to get the wood. We start busting up again. Of course, I've had 4 kids, so laughing that hard tends to make you, you know. And so we finally get the wood picked up, and we get over there, and we're sitting there, and we look at each other, and we just start laughing. And she's like, I don't think we should do it. I says, I don't either. She goes, but boy, wasn't it fun to get up here to try and think about what we might have wanted to do, but now we're not going to do? I says, yeah. And sometimes that's just what you need, is something just to completely change what's going on. And she's like, yeah, I know I've been having a hard. And then we talked about what's going on with her, and we talked about what was going on with me, and we just put it all together, and we laughed about it, and it was fun, and we were fine after that, and that's what we needed. But we were both in very dark spots, and I don't know. I'm thinking maybe because I was in such a dark spot when I called her, and she was in a dark spot. I think that was meant to happen. I was meant to call her with my darkness. She was in darkness and I didn't know it. And so, yeah, things happen for a reason. God plays a role in everything, just so you know, just so everybody knows. God plays a role in everything.
Yeah. It's crazy. There's so many stories that I'm sure both of us have with from ourselves as well as other people about how God has intervened and God has put his hand in different things. If I could share it quickly,
Oh, yeah.
one of the things he put into my life, I was struggling with an addiction. This was back an addiction that I had in my teenage years, and then went into my early 20s when I was back in college. But I was going to these meetings, and this bracelet, this white bracelet, I wear this all the time. And it's funny. It's funny how many people don't say anything about it. They're just like, "Oh, he just wears this bracelet." But this is the second bracelet that I've had because the first one broke after wearing it for 5 years. I've had a white bracelet on my hand since December of 2019,
Wow,
and
that's a long time.
the bracelet before this one said "one day at a time," and that's really what it's about. It's about
Yeah.
one day at a time, and just thinking about being in the present, just doing 24 hours. That's all you have to do. 24 hours. Don't think about tomorrow. Don't think about everything else that has to go on. Next 24 hours, that's what you got to think about.
Yep.
And
And
so,
sometimes you might have to break it down to every hour in the beginning. In the beginning of sobriety from drugs and alcohol, in the beginning of staying away from whatever the uh, what's that word? Whatever the addiction is,
yeah,
you know?
addiction.
Yeah. So, sometimes it's just an hour at a time, for some, but yeah, 24 hours, one day at a time, keep coming back. It works.
Yeah, keep working it. You're worth it, right?
Nope.
It's about consistency, but it's not only about consistency, because I think we talk about that a lot when it comes to self-development in the industry of like knowledge and trying to be the one percenters and be wealthy in that. We talk about you got to be consistent with it. But one thing that's not talked about a lot is it's just the small things, like small things every single day that get you to where you need to go. Like me wearing this, it didn't like wearing it for a couple of days. It's like, oh, I just wear a white bracelet for a couple of days. But now, where are we sitting at like almost 19, 20, 21, 5-ish years later, that says something. But it's the small, consistent steps that get us from where we are or where we were to where we are now and where we want to go.
Yep. I agree with that totally. 'Cause you know what? If you try and take these big little steps is the best way. Because if you try and make it in leaps and bounds, you're gonna, miss a lot. There's so much in the little steps, that you can take from what you do. And that's with every addiction, and every thing you're trying to heal or change.
Yeah. Speaking of little steps, how many grandkids do you have?
Or you would never guess how old the oldest one is.
Well, considering I never guess a woman's age, I'm not even going to attempt it.
She's 21. 21.
Amazing.
So I got 21, 16, 6, and 3.5 months.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
precious. So
Yeah.
4 kids and then now 4 grandkids.
Yep. Yep. Two boys, two girls, as far as my kids, and then three granddaughters, one grandson. And I just got my grandson. I was waiting for him.
So tell everybody, how is it, one, having a new grandson, but two, how is it being a grandmother?
I really love it. With my two oldest ones, I got to raise them for 2 years when they were 2 and 5, and so I
Okay.
had them for 2 years, and then my 6 year old, I had her a lot because my son lived with me. So, and he got 50-50 custody. So actually, I got 50-50 custody. So, and then now she's 6. And then my new one, I go over there, 3 or 4 times a week and watch him so she can get work done on the computer. So yeah, it's amazing. I love it. Yeah, they're
So
precious.
cool. I always hear that being a grandparent is one of the best things, simply because you get to be around the cute little babies and the cute kids and all the fun stuff. But then when they get in trouble or you got to change a diaper, then you can hand it off to the parents.
No, my daughter's like, Mom, can you go change the baby for me? I got to do this real quick. Yeah, that don't work. But one thing that we get to do as grandparents is we get to buy the loud, obnoxious, irritating toys and give them to the parents, and then we get to leave. And then the kids
You
sit there
know,
and bang on them and make all kinds of noise.
I have some beef with you on that, okay? My parents and my in-laws do that exact same thing. They get all the fun, noisy toys for our kids and get all that stuff. And then after a couple days after Christmas or their birthdays, they're gone. And I'm like, well, now I'm stuck with this karaoke microphone where the kids are running around the house, like singing Frozen over and over and over again. And it's like, I love you kids, but 5 minutes, I would love just 5 minutes, peace and quiet. And then maybe we get to the point of where we don't charge the microphone accidentally. Uh,
Maybe
but
what
I'm
you
glad
need to
that,
do is you need to charge that microphone and you need to sing to the kids in your
you
worst
know,
voice,
that's
in your
not a bad
worst
idea.
voice. And they'll be like, no. And you could be like, what? I listen to you. Come on, sit down, listen. Guarantee you they'll like cut back a little bit.
I agree with you if they were older, but my kids are 4, 2, and then 11 months. So that me just singing in general to them, whether or not I sing like Kermit off the Muppets or something like that, they're probably just living on cloud 9 with hearing dad sing.
Oh.
But I'm glad that you get to enjoy your grandkids. And I am grateful for my parents and grateful for my in-laws as well, because they do fantastic stuff of support and being able to bring happiness to the grandkids. So I'm sure you feel that exact same way towards yours.
Maybe if they see this and they realize that you don't like those obnoxious, noisy toys, they'll tone down to just like the Barbie dolls or something.
And then we'll get this up on Spotify and YouTube, send it out, and I'll just share it to them and saying, hey, this is a really cool episode. You should come in at minute 21 through 24. No, they're
Uh,
they're yeah, they're great. So I would love to hear more about your coaching and you as an author. Please tell us more about that.
okay, so I wrote 2 books. The first book I wrote, I literally pretty much just threw up in this book. It was a 5 year
Okay.
period of my life where everything was just a mess. I was in a lot of physical pain. I had attempted suicide, so it has my suicide in there and all that stuff, and this bad person I was with. And but then I wrote another book, and that's an autobiography as well, but it goes from my age of 4 until I was 20. And the title of that book is called Wrongfully Convicted, because I was charged with second degree murder with malice at the age of 19. And that was because the boyfriend was on drugs and the cops came, they beat him in front of me and was a whole mess. And anyway, so I ended up getting charged, and they let me plea bargained, and that's what put me in that treatment center. And so that's what that book's about. It talks about my grandma, it talks about my kid, me growing up as a kid, and just a whole bunch of stuff. And so basically, that really had nothing to do with my coaching or any of that. That was just some books I needed to write to get the stuff out of me and onto paper to heal the pain and struggles that I went through all that stuff. And it did. It helped me heal a lot because as went through it, I talked through it with other people and things like that. And it was a very healing thing. With my coaching, what I do is I do one-on-ones. I haven't set up a group class yet, but I'm going to. But on the one-on-ones, if you're local, we get together and have coffee. We can just do some Zoom calls. We discover what it is that's like, affecting you, and we problem solve what we could do to solve some of these issues that you're allowing to burden you and possibly take you down the road that you really don't want to go down, and I'm willing to sit and talk to anybody, free of charge, just, to talk and find out what's going on and be there for them and let them know that they're not alone, and help them get plugged in somewhere if they need to, if they're suffering some mental health issues, and possibly need to be on medications or whatever, because I'm bipolar and I know that that is a big thing in the world right now is mental illness, and a lot of things can be taken care of with medications, and I can't do that, but I can help you walk through that door if you need to. If you need to go down to Valley Mental Health or whatever to reach out and say, hey, I feel like this, and you know, do what you got to do. I mean, sometimes that's hard to do. And sometimes you don't want to go to your family and say to your family, that you're having these thoughts or that, you've all these racing thoughts and stuff, which could be a sign of mental illness or whatever. So to have somebody who's outside of your circle be able to, reach their hand in and walk with you, you know, that's what people need, and that's what I like to do, you know.
Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like we're both in very common when it comes to we've gone through some stuff and we've overcome it to such a degree, and overcoming might not be the right word, but have gone through it to such a degree and changed it into an advantage for us that now we want to help more people through it. With me, it's dyslexia. With you, it's individuals who are suicidal and are heading down that route. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. Also drug addiction because I've been down that
Yeah.
route. So,
Yeah. So for those who are listening, specifically for who you talk with in that, the drug addiction, suicide, is there anything else that's in there, or those kind of the two main uh topics? Would that be the right word for it? Two main things that you help coach people on.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, Julie Kay, I am glad that you were able to jump on. For everyone who's listening, what's the best way to find you
You can
if they
find
want to
me.
connect?
You can find me on Facebook at Julee Lisonbee. That's Julie with two E's, no I. And I have a free book at juleekay.com/free book that talks about suicide and gives you some tips and stuff like that. And if you really want to speak to me, to download that free book, it'll send me your email and I will reach out to you, or friend me on Facebook or even Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well. So.
Awesome. All those links, oh, goodness gracious, all those links are going to be in the description for the YouTube video as well as Spotify. So all those who are listening and watching, go to the description. You'll be able to connect with Julie Kay there, as well as be able to grab her free ebook. Such a wonderful gift. Thank you for giving that to my audience. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, something I do, Julie, at the end of each of my episodes is something I got from Stephen Bartlett. I hope I said that name right. His podcast is Diary of a CEO. So I've kind of like taken it and adapted it into mine. But what he does is something called the final question. So what the final question is the final question of the podcast that the previous person that I interviewed has left for you.
Oh,
You
okay.
you don't get to know who that was, and the next person's not going to know you what question you leave, but they left a question for you. So as I'm pulling it up, let me just get it quick. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's loading. There we go. Okay. Your question. How much better could it get?
How much better could it get? How
How
much
much
better
better
could
could it
my
get?
life get or anybody's life get? 100% better than what it is right now. Your job can change, your outlook could change. You could meet the love of your life. You could go on that most wonderful vacation with your spouse. It's it's only going to get infinitely better. The more we strive, the better it's going to get. The more we reach for the stars, the more we're going to get. There we go.
I love that. Julie, thank you for being on here. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us. And that wraps up another episode of Light Beyond Limits. If you found inspiration in this episode, go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, as well as you can go to our website, coachwilliamblake.com, where you'll find the link to our podcast, the links to all our socials, as well as everything else going in the Achievers universe. Until next time, my friends, continue to light up this world, continue to move forward on your path, and always remember that there are people around you who are having problems just like you. And as we open communication and open trust and vulnerability, each of us can realize that life is just going to get better. We'll see you on the next episode of Light Beyond Limits.